The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of their organization.
Welcome to the Enterprise Knowledge Cast. This is a look into the world of knowledge management, information management, data management, and everything in between. This is brought to you by Enterprise Knowledge. I'm Zach Wahl, founder and CEO of EK. Today we're speaking with Nicki Usiondek, who's the KM manager at Fragomen. Nicki, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I should say I'm one of the KM managers at Fragomen. We have a full team. I think there was about 25 of us.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking to hear more about how you're organized too then. That's fantastic. Before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about how you and how Fragomen defines KM. To me, it's always this very simple question that has many complex answers because it's such an abused term that means different things. So, Nicki, take it away.
Yeah, I think they say something like if you ask 10 different KM managers what knowledge management is, you'll get 10 different answers. And I'm lucky because the director of our group, he has a great vision. And so his definition that we use is knowledge management is simply getting the right information to the right person at the right time so they can make the right decision or give the right advice.
I love that. And I actually love the outcomes to it. I think a lot of organizations do the first half, right? Get the right information from the right people, but that still leaves you with the so what, why KM? And so to include that, to make the right decision at the right time, to give the right advice, I think is the right end to that phrase or sentence for you. So you mentioned a little bit just briefly about the fact that you're one of 25, which is a pretty big deal and pretty significant for any organization, let alone a law firm. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how KM has come to be so prominent at Fragomen and really what the history of that is.
So the group existed before I joined Fragomen. I think, when you have a global law firm, we specialize in immigration. One thing you need to be aware of is we practice in, I believe, over 126 countries. So that's immigration laws for over 126 countries. But we also, give a little bit of other service in other countries too. So there's a lot of information that's out there. One of the things that we realized was that in order to make it easier for our subject matter experts, the people that are working with clients, to answer things quickly, is we needed a database or something that would pull everything and look at it from different ways, because it's not just people immigrating to the US, it's people immigrating to China and other places, or I should say it's getting business visas, but there's a whole variety of scenarios that play out. And so they recognized that we needed to have one place where you could find all of that information quickly. And part of the people on our team are attorneys that specialize in immigration. And so we use their subject matter expertise to kind of pull the information that we know. Whenever there's a new rule that's released, they analyze it and add it to our database so it's available to clients, usually in less than 72 hours.
Wow. We always talk about one of the keys to a really successful knowledge base being the timeliness of it. And so that, if you want to call it an SLA or service level agreement saying, hey, within 72 hours, we're typically going to have the latest information in here is really impressive. How does that work in practice? How does everybody know what their role is? Are there defined workflows? How have you really made this real?
Well, there's different roles within our KM group. I focus on content management and also the retrievability and findability. Other people focus on the country laws. How it works in that regard is we have people that are assigned regions. So that way they just focus on their regions and they become experts in that area. And then we also have a group of people that help us making sure that the formatting's right, that the spelling's right, that there is consistency with writing across the board. Especially too with so many different languages in play, we try to take a standardized form. So we use US English as opposed to UK English. And we also have a graphic designer too, who helps us with making sure the images are great, because we often produce little videos for people on specific areas of immigration for certain countries.
Cool. So you've got content quality, the findability, the readability and format, as well as the UI, the look and feel. You're checking all the boxes there. You just said something kind of interesting, and we're seeing this more and more. the fact that a successful knowledge base isn't just going to be text. It's not just going to be long, unruly documents. You mentioned video. Can you tell us a little bit about the different types of content or the different formats of content that are housed within and how that came to be?
I don't know how it came to be. I work with a group of really smart people, and I have to say my experience with other Fragomen employees is that everyone's just really smart and sharp. So someone came up with that idea and ran with it. I don't know who, but they had a really good vision. They're, I want to say cartoons, but not like Schoolhouse Rock. They're a little bit more polished, and we'll do a short 3 to maybe 6 minute video on the high points that you need to know. And they're for clients, because usually, obviously, clients aren't specialists in immigration. They come to us for that. So we want to make sure that it's digestible for lay people.
So now, first of all, I'm disappointed that you don't have Schoolhouse Rock style videos within your system. But
You don't
so
want
you
to.
mentioned you mentioned this is for clients. So does that mean that your clients have direct access to the knowledge base, or is it more that somebody internal is finding something, saying, "Hey, our client would find value in this," and then shipping it over to them?
It's both. We have something called the Knowledge Center that
Mm-hmm.
is integrated with we use SharePoint. So when I say database, I mean our SharePoint. But we're looking at different platforms for potentials, because one issue with SharePoint is there's list view limits, and we already exceed them. So sometimes it
Right.
gets a bit slow.
Got
Otherwise,
it.
it's a great format. So some clients will have a higher level that they pay to us. And so they log into their portal, and they can go to the knowledge library, and it will have various information, because we have a lot of different knowledge products. And also some of them will have access to videos. Other times, if a client is more ad hoc, they'll ask their client rep, and they will contact either us or the marketing department, and we'll work with getting the video to the client.
Perfect. That's some great flexibility. So you mentioned that your specific area of responsibility is around retrievability and findability. And findability is one of my favorite made-up words within the KM space. So I'm excited to hear this. What does that mean? What are your day-to-day responsibilities? What are you spending your time doing?
Yeah, someone asked me that question recently too, like, oh, describe your day to day. And I don't have like one set description. Every day is very different.
Cool.
And it's really just about meeting the needs of my company and our clients. So I always look at it this way. You can have the best information in the world, very thorough, vetted, research, just solid. But if it's hard to find, people aren't going to use the platform you have it on. And knowledge management is therefore meaningless. So, to have a successful findability, you really need to understand taxonomy and metadata. And I have the library background, so it just kind of made sense for me to navigate into this area and really highlight it, because I think we've all had that experience when we're doing a Google search and you're looking up, you want to see information about the dolphins, and dolphins appear, not the Miami Dolphins, right? So there's this whole idea of like controlled language that makes it very specific. So I think years ago, one way findability existed prior to this big boom in metadata was Boolean searches. But no one learns those anymore, and they aren't really used because of Google, right? Google makes everything very easy, although sometimes you get information you don't want. So the goal for me is to make it very easy, but with the information you want.
Excellent. So really search in context or findability in context. That's great. So taxonomy definitely plays a major role in that, applying filters, and I'm sure used for your search weighting, as in WEIGHTING. So
Times.
yeah, ideally. So sure, there's no average day, but what are you doing around taxonomy, or what are you doing around really ensuring that the right people are finding the right stuff at the top of their results, or in as little time as possible?
So being a global company, it can be somewhat challenging just because of the different way people phrase things or call things. So it's just understanding who the users are, which for us, the users are Fragomen employees. And we have, I think, over 54 offices worldwide. So we have a large group of people. And so it's just being aware of the fact that in the US, we'll say filing an application. In the UK, they'll say lodging an application. And there's all sorts of various other phrasings that can be found throughout the world. So the idea is to link these terms together, right? That's the taxonomy. You link them. And so if someone says, oh, lodging, I want to do lodging an application, it's not going to pull up hotel information. It's going to pull up, filing an application.
Got it. Okay. So a lot to do with synonyms, and also, I would imagine, effectively defining that Rosetta Stone of terms that will work for the greatest common denominators, as we call it. So, Nicki, you mentioned a library background. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are now? I imagine a bit of a circuitous route. So why don't you tell us your story?
I initially was working in intellectual property as a paralegal. And this was back in 2008. So there was this big push for, actually 2008, 2009, but there was a big push to go paperless, right? Everyone wanted to be green without understanding what it actually meant to be green and not really necessarily having the IT infrastructure or the applications to support it. So we decided that, most legal files can get quite large, especially patent files. And so the decision was made that we were going to use SharePoint, and we were going to scan all of our files and have them available in the cloud. Well, not in the cloud, actually, it was on a server. So this was pre-cloud. So I was like standing in front of the scanning machine, and this was before OCR was standard on scanning machines, and we would just scan one giant document. So you would have a 500-page document, PDF, that wasn't OCR'd, so you couldn't search it. There was no bookmarks, and no one wanted to use them because they weren't realistic. Like the time it took to find what you were looking for in an electronic file was significantly longer than in the paper file. Mm-hmm. So as I was like standing there, having to then each chunk it out individually, right? So here's the claims, here's, the power of attorneys, and do it file by file, I was thinking like there has to be an easier way, right? Like I'm not the only person who's thinking about this information. And I'm sure that, someone has a solution. And then it kind of like just clicked to me that librarians do this, but in a different format, right? So I looked into some different librarian programs, and I went to Wayne State University because they have kind of their program is library and information management. So you learn a little bit about the tech side. I got my library degree and began working as a law librarian. And legal knowledge management is something that's the last 10 years is really a big boon. Mm-hmm. And so it just made sense to kind of work in this realm as opposed to librarianship, especially because I found myself all of a sudden owning the intranet and various other non-traditional library information.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems like for your role, you need to have both the subject matter skill as well as the understanding or expertise around classification, organization. So really that library skill. But I've also heard there being a technical aspect to your job. You mentioned SharePoint. So how did you acquire that technical element?
Well, so the degree, with the information science, they do teach you part of that. But also through work, trial and error. I would go to SharePoint Fest, which if you ever have the opportunity to go. I mean, it sounds crazy, but you learn so much information, and you really see how companies are positioning to further move into the 21st century and how it can benefit for you. And really, it was mostly just like, reading numerous blogs, taking numerous courses either through work or for free, just like reading everything and practicing and playing. And I think one of the nice things about SharePoint is it's really hard to break in this world. So we use it in the cloud now. So we're in the O365 environment, and it's mailable. So you can do a lot of updates with it, and it's flexible, and you can't really break it because there's always the recycle bin. So you can things, or you can, restore a previous page. And so it's one of those things where it's okay to go in and play with it, because even if you do something scary, like delete a page, which I've done before, you literally just go to the recycle bin, say restore it, and no one knows.
Excellent. Yeah. Everybody loves an undo feature. I could use one in life, guys. So great. Now, you have taken this very specific path. Is it the same path that you'd recommend for somebody else who wants to be where you are now, who wants to follow your career path, or would you make any other recommendations?
That's like such a good question, and I don't honestly know. So library school is expensive. You have to have a master's. There's not really an ALA, American Library Association, bachelor's program. So it's a master's degree. And it's kind of like a mini MBA, because I say mini MBA because it's not specialized in one area, that it touches on everything. So it's great, but it is expensive. So I don't think you have to go that route. I'll tell you the majority of actually everyone that is in my group has at least a bachelor's degree. Many people have masters or JDs. So at the very least, I would say have a bachelor's degree. And also really pick what area of KM you want to focus on. So if you want to focus on the tech side, you probably can teach yourself that, but also really get familiar and comfortable with taxonomy and metadata because it just makes your life easier. But really, I think you just have to have curiosity and not be afraid to delete pages by accident.
There you go. Excellent. Well, and also be in an organization where they let you make mistakes, right? It sounds like you've really had a great experience at Fragomen. You've been supported, I imagine, with 25 KMers. That's a pretty healthy culture. Clearly, they value knowledge and,
Yeah.
and the management of knowledge.
We view it as something that sets us apart from our competitors. We
Yeah.
have kept and tracked information since the early 80s on different immigration trends. So we can, look at everything that's changed. We have, we log everything. So we can basically look at an application and have a pretty good idea of how long it's going to take or what issues might pop up so we can prep the client. And so that's kind of nice. I mean, I know other firms have that too, but we do have a very robust knowledge management group. And so we have a lot of information readily available.
So it really, and I don't hear this enough, and I'm happy for you to surface it. In a way, KM is a competitive advantage for your organization, and you regard it as such. That's powerful.
Yeah.
And even the fact that this knowledge base is available to many of your customers, I imagine is something that would, in fact, increase customer retention. They don't want to leave because they don't want to lose the knowledge base. Has that come up? Does that get measured at all? Do you know?
I'm sure it does. I very rarely interact with clients. I'm usually working with Fragomen employees who interact with clients, so I don't have that information. But we're the largest immigration law firm in the world, so I think that also helps with retention.
I would imagine, yes. So I want to go back to these 25 KM managers. Can you talk a little bit about how they're organized? So you keep stressing you're the largest, you're global, all these different countries. That's a lot of complexity. How do you get 25 KMers swimming in the same direction, coordinating and really supporting the organization cohesively?
Well, part of it is having a clear KM definition, understanding what our end goal is, right? You could, if you're just asking people, go get all the most recent laws and analyze how it might impact us, you'll get very different results as opposed to we know what our clients are looking for. And we know that a lot of that, it is having the right knowledge at the right time, right? So it's being very timely. We are organized, as I said, by region. So it's not only that everyone sits in the US, we have knowledge managers in Singapore and Brussels, very all around the world in our different, not in all of our offices, but at least regionally in Latin America. I think we have 3 of our people are in Costa Rica, which I'm always very jealous of.
You should get that post. Absolutely.
But they always point out it's in San Jose. They're not at the beach,
San Jose is beautiful. And I think it's only like an hour and a half drive from the beach, if that.
Yeah,
so go for it.
Yeah. I mean, we're in the US. We're used to long drives. So that it's one of those ways how we organize it, though, is really making sure everyone understands the end goal. It's just a really nice group of people. And so we will all work really well together.
Is there a single person that's in charge of the 25 folks, or is it more divided up by business line or geo?
It is. We have Scott Lieb, and he's I actually feel really fortunate to work for him because he's just a really good person. He's very good at his job, but he also cares about people individually too.
Excellent. It's a running theme. You don't need a lot of jerks in the knowledge management field. I mean, I think if you choose to be somebody who becomes a steward of knowledge, you also become a steward of people.
Sometimes I have bad days. I'm not going to lie. I'm firm, right? But for the most part, I think I'm nice. But
awesome.
I think mean people say that. But I think everyone has a bad day. We're not robots, but yeah, I've never really met someone who's a complete jerk in KM.
There you go. Good. So just for our listeners to kind of be able to picture the organizational structure, where does Scott report in the organization, or to whom does Scott report?
Scott reports to one of the partners, and he's over us. There's 3 people directly. Well, there's 25 below him, but directly there's 3 people, and then the rest of us are divided up amongst those 3 people.
Got it. Okay. So Scott, though, has a pretty senior reporting line. I mean, that's, again, a real point of specificity that KM is highly regarded and prioritized within Fragomen. So you mentioned the changing laws, and I think we all know that laws, especially when you're tracking not just US law, but laws in all these different countries, something's always changing. There's always a need for an update. How do you manage the push versus pull? Does somebody need to come back and do another search to find out that something has changed? Or is there a way that you are notifying your constituents when a law has changed?
Well, we send out alerts. So we have email alerts that go out to clients and also internally. And so whenever there's any sort of change that is actually any sort of change, we send out a client email. And we also have a lot of blog posts, and we're really active with making sure clients are aware of upcoming changes. We don't want to surprise them. So when the presidential administration changed this year, we spent a few months after the election, but before the inauguration, just really looking at things that Joe Biden had said and trying to anticipate how it would impact the U.S. immigration system, and then giving our clients an idea. This might happen. We don't know for sure yet. They haven't even taken the helm yet, but this is based on what he said and how he operated under the Obama administration. We're pretty sure this is what it's going to look like. And then after he starts releasing his immigration plans, we have that 72-hour turnaround. But really, that's like the longest. We usually have it within 24 hours. It's really impressive.
That is really impressive. Great job. So what's coming next, either from a technical perspective or really just from an overall capabilities perspective? What's on the roadmap?
Yeah, so we're always looking for new ways to make it easier for our customers. One thing that we realized was, and I think a lot of law firms and a lot of companies do this, we basically used to have like 2 to 3 different portals for the clients. So one portal where they do, the exchange of information with immigration. And actually, I think this is the case with a lot of companies. We had to be very, very conscious of the fact that the information we have is very personal and private. So we have a very, very robust cybersecurity group. They're really impressive, actually. And so we have a secured portal that they log into for that information. And then they also used to have this other place where they would access their bills and payment. And then there was also another portal where they would access the knowledge portion. So we've actually combined all of that into one. So there's only one login that they have to know. Which, I think we're all just tired of the million different passwords and accounts that we all have. And so now, if they're in the portal where they're exchanging the information for the immigration and they're curious about any sort of knowledge or law changes, they can just click on the knowledge library and now they're at the information that's all up to date.
You mentioned potentially looking for alternatives to O365 due to the limitation with lists. Yeah. Where is that in your roadmap, or what are the plans for that?
So that's probably within within 3 years. I think our big focus right now has really been on getting people comfortable with the new way of living and working. Sure. And immigration changes, because it's now it's not just, administration or political changes, it's a pandemic. So it changes so regularly. We actually on the intranet had to create a spot specific for COVID-19 information. And we focused on 2 areas, things that were important and would impact our clients, and also ways to support our employees with just this new crazy world we live in. And our HR department did that. And they started doing virtual yoga, virtual Zumba, nice. Let us subscribe to things for meditation. And I'm fortunate because I work for just an amazing company. And I think they've done a very good job through all of this.
It sounds that way. Let's actually end with that question. What do you think has been the key to Fragomen's success with knowledge management? Why has it worked? And what would you recommend to other organizations that are looking to replicate it?
So I think it works because we have upper management fully supporting it. Austin Fragomen loves the knowledge team. He always understands and he talks about how important we are to the firm. And so he has, I think he's one of our biggest cheerleaders. So that makes it easy, right? The firm's named after him and he likes us.
That helps. Yep.
Yeah, it's having buy-in. The challenges we encounter being a global firm, we have over 4,000 employees, is just making sure that everyone knows that we exist in the company, because everyone, has a tendency to be really focused on their area that they work in. I do the same thing. And so what we do is team up with HR and do a training and show them, here's everything on the Fragomen way, which is what we call our intranet. This is how you can find things, how you can look for things. There's two focuses, again, on the intranet, things that will help our clients and things that employees need to know. And then we also toot our own horn and show them everything that the knowledge team does. So, we have heat maps that show the different trends of immigrations around the world. We have something called the World Immigration Trends Report that comes out quarterly, and it looks at everything that happened in the previous quarter and then tries to anticipate what we're going to see in the upcoming quarter. And we have immigration snapshots. We have all these different products that are available. And so we let people know. And it usually ends up with them understanding that we're here to help them and how we can actually make their jobs easier. Another focus, because of the pandemic, has been really embracing working remotely and in the cloud. And so honestly, I think the pandemic took what would have been a 10-year cultural change and forced it in 1 year.
Yeah.
A lot of people are moving off of shared drives and creating workspaces within SharePoint for their teams, for their office. And so we'll go in and help them with best practices of making sure that the site is set up in a way that works for their group, and also teaching them how to name documents and do document management.
I imagine Fragomen was much better positioned for the sudden stance of remote work than a lot of your competitors because you had already invested so heavily in KM and had the right people in place to support that.
I think the IT team would disagree with you because I think their life was insane for the first 2 to 3 months, just making sure people had the right equipment to work from home. So from the KM perspective, I think we were really well prepared. Also, a lot of my team were used to somewhat working remotely because we are spread all around the world, and a lot of us work from home all the time anyway, like I do. But I think just making sure people had the right permissions, the access, would the VPN actually support that number of people?
Right.
So from my perspective, yeah, it was seamless. Our group did fine, but I think the IT team would definitely disagree.
Fair, understood. And I think IT teams the world over would probably be jumping on that bandwagon too, for sure. Well, Nicki, thank you so much for joining us today. For all of our listeners, thanks for joining this episode of the Knowledge Cast. To check out more information on knowledge management, visit our website at enterprise-knowledge.com. Nicki Usiondek, KM Manager at Fragomen, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.